What is going on today, guys? It's another video from Hazmat Trucker, and today I just wanted to talk about how I got hired on at Love's or Gemini Motor Transport as a fuel hauler, because at the end of the day, that's what this channel is all about, let alone this YouTube video, is to help people get hired at good places to work, and not just within fuel hauling, but within trucking in general. So what I'm about to say doesn't even just apply to fuel hauling or trucking. You can also use it in pretty much any other career field. So for me, what helped me get hired is broken down into what I think are 4 different reasons, okay? So the first reason I got hired on here was because I was not afraid or unwilling to make connections to other people when I was at the loading racks. And as soon as I started out in fuel hauling, I knew I wanted to stay within fuel hauling. I just wanted to work for one of the better companies in fuel hauling. And so ultimately, whenever I was at the rack, it didn't matter where I was. And when I mean rack, I mean loading facility. And that could be a refinery, that could be a pipeline, that could be a tank farm where they store a bunch of fuel, doesn't matter. Whenever I was at a loading rack, I was talking to people constantly, and it didn't matter what company they were from. I was picking their brain about how they liked working, where they were working, if they didn't like it, what they didn't like about it, and how long they had been in fuel hauling. So I was just constantly building rapport with people, making connections from all different types of people, from all different types of companies, okay? And ultimately, that's what helped me land my job here at Gemini Motor Transport, because when I was at Pilot, I was starting to run into, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, but it's worth mentioning again. When I was at Pilot, I started running into a night driver that was here at Gemini, and I started to build that rapport with him and asked him how he liked working for Love's, and I built that connection and kept building that connection whenever we ran into each other at the loading rack. And so time went on. I eventually went to day shift at Pilot, and I happened to be loading at the loading rack next to another Gemini driver, and I said, "Hey, how's it going? How do you like working for Gemini?" Started picking his brain about how he liked working here, and then he told me about that. And I said, "Oh, cool. Well, are you guys hiring? Because, things overall at Pilot are pretty good, but they've been giving us a raw deal on cutting some benefits and perks back. So I'm just curious if you guys are hiring." And he said, "Yeah, we are hiring." And I was like, "Awesome. Well, I'd love to work for you guys." I explained I'm carded at 8 different loading racks. And so he said, "Oh, wow. So you'd probably be a good fit then." And then at that point, I asked if I could have his regional manager's phone number, and I told him I would apply. And he said, "Yeah, sure, I'll give you my RM's number." And so I applied. Once I had applied, I reached out to that regional manager, my regional manager at the time, and left him a voicemail. In that voicemail, I let him know, "Hey, my name is Chase. I'm working currently for Pilot. I heard you guys were hiring, and I have a reference from one of your drivers, Lauren, and as well as Eric, one of the night shift drivers, knows me pretty well. So if you got some time, please call me back. I've already applied." And from there, I did a on the phone interview with him later on. And then I did the whole onboarding process. Eventually, I got a job offer, and then continued on within the onboarding process. If you want a separate video about that, let me know, or any other videos for me to do. If you want me to talk about anything specifically, let me know in the comment section down below. From there, the second thing I would say after making connections was my reputation. So for those of you who don't know, and as I alluded to in the first part, people talk at the loading racks, and they don't just talk about the different companies. They talk about their coworkers. They talk about pretty much everything under the sun. And if you have a bad reputation within fuel hauling, it's going to get around. For example, when I was at Pilot, somebody had gotten fired from Gemini Motor Transport, and he had applied to Pilot, and that got around. Our lead driver asked all of us within Pilot if we knew the guy who had gotten fired and if he was worth hiring. And I didn't know him at the time, but pretty much everyone else did. And they said, yeah, he's lazy. He likes to throw back loads constantly, especially in the winter, even if things aren't really that bad. He doesn't like to work really hard, and so that's ultimately going to come back on us to pick up his slack, and that's what pretty much everyone else had known. And so lo and behold, the dude gets hired anyways, and what came to pass was eventually what everyone already saw coming, is he threw back loads, and it made our workload even more so difficult. And so, bottom line is, do your job. Don't just throw back loads for willy-nilly reasons. And if you don't want to work hard, there's a lot better industries to be in than trucking, because fuel hauling especially, not just within trucking, but fuel hauling especially, we work quite a bit on a regular basis. So, your reputation's important, and keep that in mind. Try to be at peace with everybody, so much as you can be, but ultimately, even if people don't like you, if you know how to do your job, that's going to save you more times than not. Because if you don't know how to do your job properly and people don't like you, you're not going to last anywhere, let alone trucking. And specifically for me, as for my reputation, people knew that I worked hard. Eric on night shift knew that I worked hard. Guys that I worked with at Pilot knew that I worked hard, and so that was a factor in helping getting me hired as well. And moving on to the third thing, apart from making connections and my reputation, the third thing was having adequate experience. And so at that point, I had about 3 years of driving experience, give or take, somewhere in there, before I got hired here at Gemini Motor Transport. I also had about 1.5 years of fuel experience as well. And so, like I had mentioned before, I was already carded at 8 different loading facilities. And so it's a lot harder up front to get that loading card, to get the access to the loading facility, versus if you already have it, you just transfer companies. Because generally, and this varies facility to facility, but some are a lot more strict than others, and you have to do written tests, and some can be a real pain to get into if you don't already have that loading card. So the more places you're already carded at, the better, and it's going to make it a lot more appealing for whatever company you're going to try to go to hire you, because they don't have to jump through as many hoops versus somebody who's just brand new starting out to fuel hauling. So I had my experience, and the second part of this is I already had done the research. I had watched a ton of Dirty Broke 215's videos and KDS's trucking videos. Shout out to both of those guys. And I knew ultimately I wanted to work for Gemini Motor Transport because it was the most reputable and the best place to work, in my opinion, within the area that I was living. So I already done the research. I also figured out that I wanted to retire there because of not only the pay structure that they were offering, but because it was just the best all-around company to work for from my research that I had done. So the last thing that I think is important and what helped me get hired, being able to sell myself in the interview, because when I did the phone interview with my regional manager, and I also did the phone screen with the recruiter from Loves, and I explained to both of them, I know my job history is not super stable, but ultimately I have done my research. I know that Loves, or Gemini Motor Transport, is the company that I want to retire with and I want to stay with long term. So if you give me that chance, I would love to prove that to you. So, as well as explaining that I have the experience, and I'm willing to do other things if the company requests it, or go into training for different fields, and just being willing to be cross-trained into different stuff and do other things if the company needed me to. And I explained that I just wanted to be a general long-term asset to the company. That was what I explained. So if you're able to do those 4 things, if you're able to make those connections, have a good reputation, you have the experience in the area that you want to be hired in for the company that you've done research on, and you're able to properly sell yourself to the company and explain how you're going to be a long-term asset for them, you should be able to get hired on. And this is not a guarantee of being able to get hired on anywhere, let alone at Gemini Motor Transport. But if you do all 4 of those things, your chances of success are going to be much higher than somebody who just applies and hopes for the best. So if you found this video helpful, or you disagree with me, please let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe as well. I will see you guys in the next one. God bless.